Another month has passed, which means it must be time for me to complain about yet another video game. This one is a doozy. Deliver Us Mars is the follow-up to the 2018 game Deliver Us The Moon, although I found it can be played as a standalone without too much confusion. Developed by Kyokien Interactive and published by Frontier Developments, this game promises the world but does not quite deliver. Starting with a brief synopsis, the game opens with a flashback on a lunar space station and introduces us to the protagonist, Kathy, when she is just a child. A confusing and catastrophic turn of events leads Kathy to losing her father, and a huge amount of resources and technology that were vital to Earth's survival are stolen. It should be noted here that the game is set in the future where the Earth is dying due to overuse of resources by wealthy countries, leading to a collapsing ecosystem which needs a miracle intervention to have any chance of surviving. Ha! Like that's ever gonna happen. Moving back to the game before I have my third existential crisis of the day, the game flashes forward almost a decade as Kathy is a young astronaut and learns that a strange message has reached Earth from Mars. Believing that it has come from her father, Kathy and a team head into space to find out just what happened to those involved in the events on the moon after they attempted to colonize Mars. To be honest, it plays out very much like a Mass Effect side quest, and I am more than happy with that. The game is pretty linear with a few elements of open exploration, although you are usually confined to pretty small spaces. You occasionally get flashbacks to Kathy's childhood with her mother, father and sister living on Earth whilst her father was preparing her to go to space from a young age. The game has a really strong plot and pulled me in with the question of what happened to the colonists on Mars and how they would have attempted to survive there. There were some really nice touches about the impact on mental health of such a goal, and there were some elements however that were quite heavy-handed, and the ending was pretty unsatisfactory for me personally. I would have liked a bit more oomph, particularly in this age of billionaires trying to run away to Mars and the ethics surrounding it. On a side note, if you ever want to know about why this would not work, I thoroughly recommend you look up the 1990s Biosphere 2 experiment, or you can read T.C. Boyle's The Terranauts, which is a fictional text inspired by Biosphere 2 if that's more your thing. Unfortunately, once you look past the plot and onto the mechanics of the game, things get a little less praiseworthy. I had some real issues with Deliver Us Mars and even nearly completely gave up trying to play the game at one point. This is because the game was extremely buggy in a way I would not have expected from a product that cost £25 or $30 and sold itself as this great new thing. One big issue I had was if I put my PS5 into standby mode and then came back to the game later, the audio did not fully sync, meaning I would get the background music, but interacting with objects or dialogue gave me no sound. I didn't notice this issue fully for a while, which means I missed out on some of the early information that grounded the game and spent a lot of time playing catch up. There were issues with moving around too. Not only was the way you interacted with spaces a bit of a mess in general, but the mapping of surfaces was really poor in places. You might ask, what do I mean by that? Well, there are two elements. The first is that the jump mechanic was way off, along with a few other elements. For example, you could climb certain things, but then a lower platform would not be jumpable due to an invisible wall, and then you would suddenly be able to launch yourself 10 foot over a gap. For a game that was really selling the climb and exploration element, this was just lazy. The other side of this was that there were places that had just not been programmed properly or had had issues that had been completely missed during the QA. Take this scene quite late on in the game. All I need to do is climb up a wall using the space age pickaxes. Except when I get to the top, it is not registering that the character needs to complete the lift up onto platform action. It is not registering that there is a new landing in the game, and so it's acting like you should be able to keep climbing the wall, but there's nothing there actually to climb. I honestly spent way too long trying to get this to work and gave up and went to bed. The next day, determined not to be stopped, I returned and tried again with no success. Eventually, I had to watch a walkthrough video where someone else had the exact same issue and overcame it by climbing up one specific side of the wall. It's also a shame that the graphics were not strong enough to convey the story being told. There were some gorgeous cutscene landscapes, but this was not really backed up when then playing in-game, and the character facial expressions and body movement were clunky, often not reflecting the dialogue and emotion from the voice actors, who were all doing a pretty decent job. There are some fun puzzle elements, although they often became repetitive, and I found that Ada, your robot companion, often just ended up performing the same action over and over again, when there could have been some more interesting things. Overall, I think this game had real potential and started well, but failed to uphold its vision. I'm not saying it's not worth playing, but be prepared for the fact it won't be plain sailing as you go. It's great fun to feel like you are genuinely preparing a spaceship for launch, but the rest of the game feels lackluster and unpolished. Perhaps this is a sign that Mars colonization is just not the future.